Welcome, listeners, to a world cloaked in darkness. I am Raven, your narrator, and you're tuning into the deepest, most obscured corners of the supernatural world. Before we begin our journey into the unknown, please take a moment to hit that like button, ignite a spark in the shadows, and subscribe to join our inner circle. Tonight's story, Stepmother's Curse. Using Khmer black magic to harm a stepmother for money, this heartbreaking tale unfolded around July of 2010, a tumultuous period for your family, far from the haven it should have been. It was a time marked by fierce conflicts between your father's first and second wives, which naturally spilled over into disputes and animosity among their children. Your mother was the second wife, and, unfortunately, during this period, your father suffered a series of severe strokes, 5 in total. Initially, things were still somewhat manageable. Both sides of the family, the first and second wives, took turns caring for your father diligently. However, the primary source of the irreconcilable conflict between the two sides stemmed from money, specifically, your father's entire pension. The family discussed the matter and agreed that the fifth son, from the first wife's side, would be responsible for supporting and caring for your father. Meanwhile, your father authorized your mother to manage and spend his entire pension. But things didn't go as planned. One day, the fifth daughter-in-law, the wife of the fifth son, acted disrespectfully and rudely toward your mother. She didn't hesitate to use harsh and vulgar language to berate your mother, demanding the return of the pension money that your father had entrusted to her. Recognizing that her behavior was unacceptable and excessive, you and your mother reluctantly agreed to return the money to her to avoid unnecessary trouble. However, she continued to cause trouble and create difficulties. In mid-July, just as the pandemic began to escalate, you decided to bring your father home to care for him for 2 weeks. At this time, your family had a dog that you loved very much. The dog was very obedient and gentle, never barking unnecessarily or causing trouble. In the countryside, everyone closed their doors and turned off their lights at 6 in the evening, retreating into their homes, partly because your father was ill and partly because the pandemic situation was so severe. Normally, your dog was very gentle and obedient, never barking without a reason. In front of your house was a small hair salon, facing a row of green coconut trees and a large river. Around this time, every night around 9:30 p.m., it would stand at the hair salon, looking out toward the river, and bark and howl in a terrifying way. It barked continuously like that for about a week. At first, you thought it was barking at people fishing on the river at night. But in the following weeks, you noticed that whenever it barked, it seemed to want you to go outside and see what was happening. You tried shining a flashlight around the coconut trees, but you didn't see anyone. Partly because it was a time of social distancing, no one was out at that hour. At this time, you were focused on taking care of your father and didn't pay much attention to the dog. But every day at 9:30 p.m., it would bark fiercely and inappropriately, as if someone wanted to throw stones at it or someone was hiding near your house. Each time, you would scold it and tell it to go inside. Then, the dog would bare its teeth, its eyes glowing strangely, and it would growl under the bed, looking very ferocious. You yelled at it, and eventually it would quiet down. But about 2 weeks later, your mother began to feel tired, and her health deteriorated noticeably. You thought that it might be because your mother was overworked from taking care of your father, and also because she had a history of heart disease. You tried to nourish her and take turns caring for your father so that she could rest and be less tired. But your mother's health didn't improve at all. About a month later, your mother's health began to decline severely. The strange thing was that after 6 p.m., your mother's skin began to develop yellow patches, and her eyes became unusually red. Every day, at 6 p.m., your mother would go outside to burn incense, because your family worshipped the 9 levels of ancestors a lot. Because your mother had been sick for a month, she hadn't been able to perform the rituals and burn incense. As a result, around 5 or 6 p.m., your mother began to feel a burning sensation all over her body, a heat that spread to her eyes, making them red and frightening. At this time, you thought that your mother had high blood pressure, so you rushed her to the doctor for a checkup. When Directive 16 was lifted, you took your mother for a general checkup at the hospital. After receiving the results, the doctor said that your mother was perfectly normal, had no diseases, and all of her indicators were stable. But when you got home, your mother began to feel sicker. Your mother's skin was much yellower than normal at this time, and her stomach began to swell abnormally. You found this very strange, and a strange sense of suspicion arose in your heart, so you asked your mother to see a fortune teller to find out the cause. Normally, your mother often went to the temple to worship Buddha and pray for peace. But for some reason, when you asked her to see a fortune teller this time, she resolutely refused, wanting only to stay home. Your mother said that whenever she entered the temple grounds, she would begin to feel short of breath and feel a burning sensation all over her body. She felt very uncomfortable in crowded places. You tried to persuade her, and after some back and forth, your mother finally agreed to go with you to the fortune teller's house. As soon as you arrived at the fortune teller's house, she immediately asked your mother to go inside, stand right in front of the altar, and light incense. At this time, your mother's eyes began to turn red, like someone with conjunctivitis. Her hands, feet, and entire body felt hot. The fortune teller began to read a spell to assess the situation. While reading, she spoke very accurately and in detail about the events that were happening in your family, knowing about your father, your mother, and the illnesses that you were suffering from. She also explained why the illness wasn't detected during the medical examination at the hospital. Then, the fortune teller gave your mother a deck of playing cards. After your mother shuffled the cards, the fortune teller divided the deck into 9 piles. After reading them, the fortune teller declared that your mother had been cursed with black magic from a Khmer sorcerer to harm her. The fortune teller said that the person wanted to drive you and your mother crazy, and then make both of you pregnant forever. She added that this person also wanted to harm you, but because you were born in the year of the tiger and you had the Lasat star, they could only curse you with minor things, unable to harm you seriously. As a result, you had to go to the temple yourself to ward off bad luck and pray for peace. After reading, the fortune teller said that she was too weak to handle this case, so she gave your mother 3 amulets, telling her to burn them at home and drink them with fresh coconut water, just a little bit at a time in a small glass. While the fortune teller was talking, your mother's body felt hot, and she was constantly sweating profusely. Because your family worshipped Buddha and Guanyin, the fortune teller told your mother to take the water that had been offered to Buddha and Guanyin to drink and wash her face, which could help alleviate some of the symptoms. The fortune teller also said that your mother had great fortune because she often went to the temple to do good deeds and had been a vegetarian for a long time. Your mother was also being protected and blessed by your maternal grandfather, which was why she was the way she was. She said that she could only help this much, and if the karma was too great, you had to accept it. So, she advised your mother to find a good sorcerer, regardless of ethnicity, to help, hoping to resolve this issue. When you got home, your mother drank all 3 of the fortune teller's amulets and felt a little better for about a week. During that week, you noticed a very large black butterfly appear in the house. It kept flying around the house. It flew out to your hair salon in the front, then flew back into the house, and then it landed on the ancestral altar. You said that this butterfly was very big. You had never seen one so big. You kept chasing it away, but it wouldn't leave. But at 5 p.m., it would land in front of your mother's bedroom door. Then, you knew that the butterfly was your maternal grandfather trying to send a message, but he didn't know how else to do it, so he had turned into a butterfly to let the family know. About 2 weeks later, you saw that your mother started to look tired and very pale. You said that you had looked for countless sorcerers and cried a lot because you were worried about your mother. You said that normally, your mother was very stylish and young, always happy and energetic. But during this time, your mother was sick and looked very miserable and sad. Your mother's body was no longer alive, withered like a flower about to wilt. Fortunately for you, at this time, you were given the address of a temple of an ethnic minority by an acquaintance. This temple was only about an hour away from your house by motorbike. When the two of you arrived at this temple, your mother's eyes began to turn red, and her body felt like it was on fire. As soon as you entered the temple grounds, the two of you just sat outside waiting for the shaman, because he was busy attending to many other visitors. You sat outside on the waiting bench, and the monk kept glancing at your mother, looking worried. He asked your mother to come to the altar and light incense. It seemed that this monk knew that your mother was being haunted by a very powerful spirit, so he had to ask for permission from the people who were waiting to be seen before him, and he asked for your mother to be seen first. When you went inside to see the monk, your mother sat down. The monk didn't say anything, but just took your mother's hand and took her pulse to assess the situation. As soon as he finished taking her pulse, he just clicked his tongue and said, "Oh my God, what is so evil?" At this time, he just said, "It's lucky for you that you have a connection with this temple, a connection with the mountains and forests, so you came tonight. Otherwise, if you had come a few days later, you would be dead." The monk said that it had harmed her to the point that the amulet had been thrown onto your mother's shoulder, causing her shoulders to always feel heavy. The monk asked your mother if she always felt heavy on both shoulders, as if she was carrying stones on both shoulders. Now, the monk will give her medicine so that she can go home and get rid of all the filth in her body. Take this amulet to Uncle Caleb's house, and ask Uncle Caleb for medicine, but he will understand when you burn it and drink it. You and your mother bowed to the monk, and the two of you went straight to Uncle Caleb's house. This uncle was also a shaman who specialized in removing curses, very famous in the area. When you arrived at Uncle Caleb's house, he looked at your mother for a while, then he asked your mother to give him the amulet that the monk had given you earlier for him to see. Then, he began to chant in some ethnic language that you couldn't hear clearly. After chanting, Uncle Caleb took a small knife and cut a few strands of your mother's hair. Then he held the knife and slashed randomly into the air. He slashed from her shoulders down to her feet. Then, he took a mat, spread it on the ground, and asked your mother to sit on it with her legs stretched out, and her hands placed on her knees, so that her two big toes touched each other. Then, he took a red string and tied your mother's two big toes together. Then, he started chanting something again. At this time, he placed a small earthen jar under your mother's feet. Then, Uncle Caleb took scissors and cut your mother's hair, and then he took the knife and slashed randomly into the air as before. He did it again and again like that. You said that when Uncle Caleb performed the ritual, your mother's body sweated a lot, soaking her clothes. Around the temple, it was very quiet, and you could only hear the sound of the wind rustling through the trees and the sound of birds singing on the branches, which made your hair stand on end and feel creepy. After he finished, Uncle Caleb took the water offered on the altar in his mouth and sprayed it all over your mother's body. Then, Uncle Caleb said, "You can rest assured, there is nothing to be afraid of. It can't do anything to us. But when it harms us, its karma will be repaid to its descendants. It still has to pay the price." Uncle Caleb told you this. He went on to say, "You have great fortune. You were born in the year of the tiger, right? Then you just need to diligently go to the temple to worship Buddha. Everything will be fine." This person also intended to harm you, but they didn't succeed. However, sooner or later this person will have to pay for their actions, so you can rest assured. Now, take your mother home to rest, and bring her back here next week so that I can do the ritual again to be sure. Then, you and your mother clasped your hands and bowed to Buddha and left. When you got home, your mother burned the amulet, 1 part mixed with water to drink, 1 part mixed with water to wash her hair. But absolutely no one was allowed to talk about this during that time. It had to be kept completely secret. After drinking it, your mother began to feel cool in her body again. She no longer felt as hot as before, and she no longer saw the dark shadows lurking in the house. The monk also advised you to take cacti and hang them at all the doors in the house and paste tiger images everywhere, because at 9 p.m., demons would come to harass your house. So, later you knew that the time around 9 p.m. when your dog barked inappropriately was the time when demons started to act. After the treatment, your friends and family no longer saw your dog barking inappropriately, and they also no longer saw the strange butterfly flying back to the house. Your mother was also preparing to make a lavish vegetarian meal to offer to the 9 levels of ancestors and also your maternal grandfather to express her gratitude. Later, the monk also made your mother a necklace to wear on her chest and told her not to take it off under any circumstances. If it's a little tight and difficult to breathe, loosen it a little, but you must wear it continuously and not take it off. The monk also said a very poignant sentence: everyone carries their own karma. When you get rid of this obstacle of karma, don't try to harm them to get revenge. Because when they harm others, there will definitely be someone else who will harm them later. The law of cause and effect is like that. So, through this heartbreaking story, this person also said that she had only heard similar stories told by others, and she never thought that one day she would be the one telling this scary story in her family. Now, I'll tell you a premonition from the dying words of a young man who drowned at sea. You said this strange story is like this. Opposite your house is the house of a guy you call Ethan. Ethan was the only son in the family, and when he was in school, he was a good student. When he went to school, he was always in the school's select class, but when Ethan was in 9th grade, he was seduced by his friends and fell into a life of pleasure and began to steal petty things. Because he also drank a lot from then on, his studies also declined seriously, and you remember very clearly that one day in July 2007, this guy went to steal someone else's electric wires, and in the end he was caught and detained for 2 years, and then he was released back into society to reintegrate. When he was released, the friends who used to be close to him were still playing with him now. One morning that day, his group of friends decided to organize a fun trip to the beach, so the day before, he went to buy a pair of blue swimming trunks to go swimming, to prepare for the swimming trip with his friends the next day. That morning came, at about 8 a.m., he wore those blue shorts, and went to ask his mother what she thought of them. He asked, "Mom, do you think I look good in these shorts?" At this time, his mother said, "Oh my God, why did you buy such colorful pants, son?" After that, both of them didn't think much about it, just talked happily back and forth, but later when the heartbreaking thing happened, his mother remembered and suddenly thought that maybe this was a bad omen. because his mother said that before, when he bought clothes, he had never asked her opinion on whether they were beautiful or not. At exactly 9 a.m., he had to meet his friends to go to the beach near the airport to swim, which his family didn't know at all. At this time, his mother only thought that he was going out with his friends, but she didn't think that he was going swimming. Everything was going normally until about 5 p.m. that day, when the friends in his group called his father to ask, "Uncle, has Ethan come home yet?" At this time, his father didn't know what had happened, and said, "Where has he been going since morning? I don't know." Then, only about 30 minutes later, this group of friends continued to call Ethan's father again, and this time they called to say, "Uncle, this morning, that guy. Uncle, Ethan went swimming and got lost, Uncle. We've been looking for him for a long time, but we can't find him anywhere." That's when the family started to panic and everyone immediately went to look for Ethan. The search team included Ethan's father, his uncle, and some really kind neighbors. The sun had already begun to set over the sea. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. Everyone dived into the water, searching and searching, but they couldn't find Ethan. They searched for over an hour, easily. Ethan's father realized things were getting bad and told everyone to go back to shore to figure out what to do next. He called a famous psychic who lived nearby to see if there was any way to find the body of a person who had drowned on the beach. The psychic said to check. "Let's see if there are any clothes left on the shore. If there are, he should buy incense, and the psychic will tell him what to do next." So, Ethan's dad ran to the nearest convenience store, about 2 miles from the beach, to get some incense. After he bought the incense, the psychic called back and started giving detailed instructions. She told Ethan's dad to light 3 sticks of incense, take the clothes Ethan left on the beach, go to the ocean, and pray. If you have any spiritual power, let your body wash ashore so your family can bury you properly and give you a peaceful resting place. Ethan's dad did exactly as the psychic instructed. About 30 minutes later, the ocean, which had very large waves, suddenly surged, and it pushed Ethan's body ashore. When his body washed ashore, people brought him up to the nearby grass to perform the necessary procedures. When they saw Ethan's body, his eyes were wide open like this, and his teeth were clenched on his lip, as if he was really angry about something. And his mouth and nose? You can probably guess what was coming out of them, right? After everything was done, people found a car to take his body home, to make it easier to take care of the funeral arrangements. After 3 days of holding a funeral for Ethan, it was finally time to open his grave. The first night after opening the grave, everything was normal, nothing strange happened. But on the second night, Ethan came to visit his grandfather. His grandfather was very old and weak, but he could still get around with a cane. That day, he couldn't sleep, so at about 2 a.m., he used his cane to go out to the front of the house to take care of some personal matters. Suddenly, as he walked to the front of the house, preparing to go out to the yard, he accidentally glanced over and saw a man who looked exactly like Ethan. The guy was standing there smoking, and smoke was swirling around him. He thought that someone had just come back from the beach and was resting there. But as he got closer, his grandfather clearly saw that it was Ethan, his grandson. He was overjoyed and stammered, "Ethan! Ethan's back!" Hearing his grandfather shout so loudly, everyone in the house quickly ran out to see, but they didn't see anyone there. So, that night, Ethan could only come to the porch. He couldn't come inside the house. A few days later, about 5 days after opening Ethan's grave, his family, including 4 sisters, the second, third, and fourth, and Ethan, who was the youngest son in the family, were together. These sisters all worked and lived in Saigon, but they had returned home for the funeral and stayed for a few days before returning to Saigon. That night, everyone stayed up until about 10 p.m., and then they started going to bed. The fourth sister slept right in front of Ethan's altar along with the second sister. As the fourth sister was falling asleep, at about 2 a.m., she dreamed that Ethan came back. He said to her, "I'm so cold, I can't come inside the house because the gatekeeper and the earth gods won't let me in." As soon as she saw that, she woke up with a start. That's how it was. The next morning, she told her mother. Her mother immediately went to the temple, looking for the monk who had summoned Din's spirit from the sea to get to the bottom of things. After listening, the monk said, "Okay, tomorrow I will perform a ritual to offer sacrifices to his spirit, asking for permission for him." The next day, the monk came to the house, asking the earth deity and earth gods for permission for Din's spirit to receive offerings and be allowed into the house. That evening, the whole family was sitting and talking in the living room when they suddenly heard the sound of dishes clattering in the kitchen. Everyone thought that some stray cat must have sneaked in and was messing with the food. In the middle of the night, Din came back. He appeared in front of the altar, looking at his fourth sister with a very sad look. He said, "Sister, I was wearing a strange hat, and when I jumped down, I landed right on a blanket and a pan at the bottom of the sea, so I got swept away and sank really deep. I'm so cold, sister." The fourth sister woke up with a start, quickly went to the altar, and lit a stick of incense for him. The story didn't stop there. While the sister was holding Din's photo, lighting incense, and glancing out the window, she saw his figure flash by and disappear into the air. On the 21st day memorial of Din's death, the house next to his was Uncle Elias's house, and then Uncle Julian's house. His house and Uncle Elias's house were right next to each other. And Uncle Elias's house and Uncle Julian's house were close, only about 12 steps apart. Uncle Julian had two sons, one who had married and lived far away, and one who had a family but still lived with his parents. When Din was alive, he often went to Uncle Julian's house to play with his youngest son. Uncle Julian's house was built in the old style, with windows in every room to catch the breeze and look out into the alley. Before the 21st day memorial, Din appeared in the dream of Uncle Julian's youngest son, giving him a number. But at that time, Uncle Julian's son just thought it was a normal dream. So, the next night, Uncle Julian's son went to bed but still left his headphones on at a moderate volume, at about midnight. He suddenly heard someone calling in his ear. The person said, "Hey buddy, do you want to ask for a number? I'll give it to you. Bet on the fish, you'll win tomorrow." At that time, Uncle Julian's son thought he had misheard. But no, he unconsciously looked out the window and saw Din's figure. The next day, Uncle Julian's son had a high fever. He told the story to Uncle Julian, and Uncle Julian quickly bought offerings for Din. Uncle Julian's son gradually recovered. By the 21st day memorial, no one saw Din anymore. According to Din's father, Din did come back, but he didn't tease anyone anymore. He must have been liberated and reincarnated. What do you guys think about this story? Leave a comment below for everyone to know. Goodbye. If you've watched to the end of the video, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Okay, let's see if any of Ethan's clothes got left behind on the beach. If so, his dad needed to grab some incense, and the medium would let him know what to do next. So Ethan's father, bless his heart, hightailed it to the closest convenience store, a couple of miles down the road from the beach, to buy some incense sticks. After he'd bought the incense, the medium called him back and started laying out some seriously detailed instructions. She told Ethan's dad to light 3 incense sticks, grab the clothes that Ethan had left behind on the beach, go down to the water, and say a prayer. If this boy's got any kind of spirit left, she told him, let his body wash back up on the shore so his family can give him a proper burial and a place to rest in peace. Ethan's dad did exactly what the medium told him to do. About half an hour later, the ocean, which had been throwing off these huge, monstrous waves, suddenly surged forward and pushed Ethan's body right up onto the beach. When they pulled him ashore, everybody moved him up onto the grass nearby to take care of what needed to be done. When they saw Ethan, his eyes were wide open, staring like that, and his teeth were clenched down tight on his lip, like he was still furious about something. And his mouth and nose? Well, I guess you can imagine what was coming out of them, can't you? After everything was finally squared away, people went and got a car to take his body home, so they could get started on making the funeral arrangements. After 3 long days of holding Ethan's funeral, it was finally time to put him in the ground. The first night after they buried him, everything was quiet, nothing weird happened at all. But the second night, Ethan decided to pay his grandpa a visit. His grandpa was old and frail, but he could still get around with the help of his walking stick. That day, he just couldn't get to sleep, so around 2 in the morning, he grabbed his cane and went out to the front of the house to take care of some business. Suddenly, as he was walking towards the yard, he happened to glance over and saw a man who looked just like Ethan. The guy was standing there smoking a cigarette, and the smoke was curling all around him. At first, he thought it was just some guy who'd walked back from the beach and was taking a break there. But when he got a little bit closer, Ethan's grandpa got a clear look and realized it was Ethan, his grandson. He was so happy and started sputtering, "Ethan! Ethan, you're back!" Hearing his grandpa yelling like that, everybody in the house came running out to see what was going on, but they didn't see a soul out there. So, that night, Ethan was only able to come as far as the porch. He wasn't allowed to come inside the house. A few days later, about 5 days after they buried Ethan, his family, including his 4 sisters, the second oldest, third, and fourth, and Ethan, who was the baby of the family, were all together. All the sisters worked and lived down in Saigon, but they'd come back home for the funeral and were staying for a few more days before they had to go back to Saigon. That night, everybody stayed up talking until around 10 at night, and then they all started to head off to bed. The 4th sister slept right in front of Ethan's altar next to her second oldest sister. While the 4th sister was just starting to drift off to sleep, around 2 in the morning, she dreamed that Ethan came back to her. He told her, "I'm so cold, I can't come inside the house because the gatekeeper and the earth gods won't let me in." As soon as she saw that, she woke up with a jolt. That's how it went down. The next morning, she told her mom all about it. Her mother wasted no time, heading straight to the temple to find the monk who had originally summoned Din's spirit from the sea, hoping he could make some sense of it. After listening, the monk said, "All right, tomorrow I'll hold a ritual to make offerings to his spirit, and I'll ask for permission for him too." The next day, the monk came to the house, and he pleaded with the earth deity and the earth gods to let Din's spirit receive the offerings and to allow him to come inside the house. That evening, the whole family was sitting around, chatting in the living room, when they suddenly heard the sound of dishes clattering together in the kitchen. Everybody just figured that some stray cat had sneaked in and was messing with the food. In the dead of night, Din returned. He showed himself in front of the altar, looking at his 4th sister with such a sad, forlorn look in his eyes. He said, "Sister, I was wearing this crazy hat, and when I jumped into the water, I landed right on a blanket and a pan at the bottom of the ocean, and it just swept me away, sending me sinking way down deep. I'm so cold, sister." The fourth sister woke up with a start, and she hurried over to the altar and lit an incense stick for him. But the story doesn't end there. While the sister was holding Den's photograph, lighting the incense, and glancing out the window, she caught a glimpse of his figure flash by and disappear into thin air. On the 21st day anniversary of Den's death, the house next to his family's house was his Uncle Elias's house, and then after that was Uncle Julian's house. His house and Uncle Elias's house were right next door to each other. And Uncle Elias's house and Uncle Julian's house were close by, only about 12 steps away. Uncle Julian had two sons, one who had gotten married and moved far away, and another who was married but still lived with his parents. When Den was still alive, he would often go over to Uncle Julian's house to hang out with his youngest son. Uncle Julian's house was built in the old style, with windows in every room to let the breeze in and look out into the alley. Before the 21st day memorial, Den appeared in the dream of Uncle Julian's youngest son, giving him a number. But at the time, Uncle Julian's son just thought it was a regular dream. So, the next night, Uncle Julian's son went to bed but left his headphones on, set at a medium volume, around midnight. All of a sudden, he heard someone calling his name in his ear. The person was saying, "Hey buddy, you want to ask for a number? I'll give you one. Bet on the fish, you'll win tomorrow." At first, Uncle Julian's son thought he must have misheard something. But then, without even thinking about it, he looked over to the window and saw Den's figure standing there. The next day, Uncle Julian's son came down with a high fever. He told the whole story to Uncle Julian, and Uncle Julian quickly bought some offerings for Den. Uncle Julian's son slowly started to recover. By the time the 21st day memorial came around, nobody ever saw Den again. According to Den's father, Den did come back, but he didn't play any more pranks on anyone. He must have found peace and been reincarnated by then. What do you all think about this story? Leave a comment down below so everybody can hear about it. Goodbye. If you've watched until the end of the video, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel, okay?